To get started, I cut two 24-inch square panels of plywood down to 16 by 24 to be the top and bottom of the table. I went over to my router table and I cut the channels for the T-track. I used a 3/4 inch mortising bit and the depth of cut was 3/8, which was too deep to do in a single pass, so I raised my bit in increments and I crept up to my final depth. I marked out where I wanted my sacrifice plates to go and I drilled a 1-inch hole on all four corners. And then I cut it out with my jigsaw. I laminated the two panels together. I didn't want the panels to shift when I put the weight on top, so I put a couple of brad nails in the channels to keep everything aligned. Once the lamination was dry, I decided I wanted to do some sort of edge banding. The only problem was that the Rockler's T-Track intersection kit is 6 inches wide, so I needed the channel to be exactly 3 inches from the edge. So I marked and cut off the thickness of the edge banding material. I decided to use this cherry that I had laying around because I thought the contrast would look pretty cool. So I cut it up and glued it on. No fancy joinery or miters here. I thought butt joints would look just fine. While the glue was drying, I figured I'd get started on the fence. Using the same material, I cut it into two strips, jointed, planed, and glued to each side of a strip of plywood. I wasn't overly worried about the cherry cupping or twisting over time, but since my garage isn't climate controlled and I live in western New York, which experiences a lot of swings in weather and humidity, I figured it wouldn't be a bad idea to give my fence plywood core for extra stability. Back to the tabletop. Since the fence on my router table was still set at 3 inches, I opened up the edge banding. I marked out where I wanted the channel for the T-track I would use with my hold downs, and I routed it out across the table. With all the channels routed out, I installed the intersection kits. The edge banding thickness was right on, so the edge of the track was pretty much flush with the edge of the table. I cut the rest of the length of track on my miter saw. The track is aluminum and cuts pretty nicely with a carbide tipped blade. Once I had all the track cut, I hammered them in place and screwed them down. The table is nearly complete, so back to the fence. I sent the fence through the planer a bunch of times to thin down the cherry on both sides. Once I got to a good thickness, I marked out and cut the fence to be 3 inches tall. And now that it's at its final width and height, I took it to the miter saw to cut it to its final length. I'm going to be using a top-mounted 3-inch stop block by Rockler, so back to the router table to cut another T-track channel. I cut the track to length and installed it on top of the fence. In order to secure the fence to the table, I took the cutoff from the fence and I made two small blocks with slots that allow for easy, flexible adjustment. I centered the blocks where the track will be under the fence and I glued them up. I marked the metal table slot locations and using a Forstner bit, I bored the holes and countersinks for hammer-in T-nuts. A couple of bolts and washers and it's secured in place. I gave the whole table and fence a coat of boiled linseed oil to seal and protect the wood and to give it a finished look. I was really happy with how this turned out. I used a couple of long T-bolts and tall handle knobs to secure the fence to the table. And here it is all finished. I'm really happy with how this project turned out, and it was fairly easy to do. It's going to make my drilling repeatable, easy to set up, not to mention much safer. I hope this video helps you if you're thinking about making one, and thanks for watching. Hit the like and subscribe button if you don't mind, and I'll see you in the next video.